Good morning, folks. We're over at Fredonia, Iowa at the river landing. Drove the old 27 Dodge Brothers over here. Some guys down there fishing. That's the old train bridge. And I don't know, the weeds are growing up awfully tall over here. See if we can see the highway bridge over here. Get over here a little bit, you'll be able to see the highway bridge down there. We used to come camping over here quite a bit, but it's not as well maintained as it used to be. I don't even know if they allow camping here anymore. Anyhow, fun fact about Fredonia, which we're going to drive through here in just a minute. This tiny little town was at one point in the running to be the state capital of the state of Iowa. It ended up being Des Moines, but Fredonia was a contender at one point, and it was because the two rivers here, the Iowa River and the Cedar River, converge here along with the railroad, and in a road, like one of the major roads back then, all converged here. So it was a good place back then. And the reason I'm making this video is to talk about the road that is just over the levee down here. We're going to drive back out. We'll get out and get a picture of the sign that's out there, and then we're going to drive farther down, and there's a nice big plaque commemorating it, but it is the Convict Road. It was built in 1913 and opened in 1914, I believe. And it was it wasn't the first paved road in Iowa, but we'll have to read the signs. I believe it was the first paved road in Iowa that was not in a town. It wasn't a city street in a town. It was the first paved road that just went out through the country. It's only, I believe, we'll have to read on the sign, I believe 1.6 miles, but it was a big deal back then, and it was right at the beginning of paved roads. Dad and Leo's over there now. Leo's wandering around sniffing everything. But yeah, it was right at the beginning of paving roads, and one of the signs we'll read on it tells what percent of roads were paved then, and then what percent was paved by like 1930, and it's a huge difference. There was almost no paved roads in Iowa in 1914 when they paved this road. So we're going to get back in the car here in a minute. I should have washed it. It's dirty, but oh well, you can ride along in a dusty car. Even got mud on the tires coming in here. There's some pretty good sized mud puddles. We'll go over the levee, get a shot of that sign over there, and then we'll drive down the Convict Road, and we'll stop at each one of the signs along the way to read the signs and the history about one of the very first paved roads in the state of Iowa. Down over the hill fishing somewhere down there. Nope, yeah, there's somebody right there. Okay, we're just on the other side of the levee. We're going to come up here. I'm going to read this sign. Loiza County Historic Site, Convict Road. I've got pictures of this sign that I can edit in if it's clearer that way, but it says this point is the western terminus of the Convict Road, one of the earliest rural concrete roads in the U.S. and one of the first in Iowa. Built with convict labor in 1914, this 1.35-mile road was built at county government expense. This road may be the second oldest stretch of unaltered original concrete surface in the state. It says the road connected the longest river bridge span in Iowa when it was built in 1878. The bridge piers are still visible in the river at low water. The convict laborers lived in a tent camp just south of where you are standing while they worked on this end of the road surfacing. Then there's about the Iowa River. Our river begins its journey to the Mississippi near Clear Lake in north central Iowa. It joins the Cedar River here in Loiza County just a few hundred yards north of this point. It empties into the Mississippi River southeast of Toolsboro. Some facts about the Iowa River here in Loiza County. The Iowa River shares its shoreline with Loiza County pioneer towns of Lafayette, Toddville, Hillsboro, and Fredonia. The site of an experimental station by John F. Bopel, father of the pearl button industry in the Midwest. The first ferry crossing was established in 1837, Clark's Landing. 2 steamboats, the Lexington 1848 and the Pisa 1841, were built here. The last steamboat on the Iowa River visited here circa 1860, which is crazy to me. This river barely has enough water for a john boat most of the year. I can't believe that back then they were able to run steamboats, not even here, way past here, on up to Iowa City and Cedar Rapids on these small rivers. But they did what they could to transport their goods around back then, and it was pretty impressive. Now we're going to take off and drive on down. I guess from right here you can see it pretty well. This is the beginning of what's left of the Convict Road. We are going to go down. We'll go right through town, out of town, and follow the road clear to the end of the road. We'll stop and read some more signs along the way, and then we'll loop around and come back through town on it. This is still the original concrete surface of the road from 1914. You can see a little bit here that's been redone where they've had to do some work and had to tear it up in the past. But a lot of the road is still the original 1913, 1914 concrete. After we stop at this stop sign across the road, the stretch going through town has been tar and gravel to keep it smooth, but I do believe that the original concrete is still underneath of the tar and gravel when we go through town. not a smooth road anymore, but it's certainly held up well for being well over 100 years old. It also would probably seem a little less rough if you had a car that had shock absorbers, but 1927 Dodge Brothers didn't come with shock absorbers. They just let you bounce down the road back then. Alright, we're going to pull over right here, check out the little sign area they have here. Okay, like I said, I've got pictures of all of these signs that I can edit in if it shows better than what I'm showing here, but I'll read the whole thing. It might take me 10 or 15 minutes to read through all this, but it's a pretty good bit of information about the old Convict Road. It says, new roads for a new century. The Iowa farmer cannot haul to market when the market is high. He must haul to market when the roads are dry. They don't know who that quote was from, but it was from 1901. And it says, organized efforts to improve Iowa's roads had been going since the 1860s, but the rise of the automobile and bicycle added new interest and urgency. The Iowa Good Roads Association held its first convention in 1903, and in 1910, and in 1913. Oh, and reconvened in 1910 and in 1913. At the same time, the Louisa County government was grappling with a local problem. Its construction of the Convict Road was one of numerous small steps which led to big change in the 1920s. In 1905, Iowans owned only 799 automobiles. 10 years later, the number had ballooned to 147,078, and by 1925 there were 659,202 cars. One for every 3.6 citizens. Yet most of Iowa's roads were in poor shape and many almost impassable in wet weather. In 1919, of 6,432 miles of roadways, only 25 were paved, less than 1/3 of 1%. Just over a decade later, in 1930, more than 45% of Iowa's roads had been paved. 3,272 miles. Concrete had first been used as a road surface in Bellefontaine, Ohio in 1894. The Convict Road was laid in 1914, and barely 20 years since the first application of the process, and its historical significance should not be understated. Deep sand kept Louisa County drivers from getting where they wanted to go, and as new and expensive as the technique was, concrete provided them with a solution that endures today, a lasting testament to the foresight and determination of Iowans to get out of the mud. Road construction in 1914. In 1914, concrete road building techniques were still evolving. Concrete specifications were determined by the newly formed Iowa Highway Commission and made available to early road building companies. Early construction methods were used with local products, sand, riverstone, and cement. Farmers were hired to quarry and deliver the materials. Concrete was delivered in bags and mixed on site. Could you imagine that? Building a road with sackcrete, basically. It's what they had to work with then, though. The specifications of the road were 1.35 miles long, 16 feet wide, expansion joints at 30-foot intervals, no curbs, thickness was 8 inches in the center and 6 inches at the edge. And it says the concrete mix was local sand, washed river stone, and Portland cement. Bags of concrete were delivered and mixed on site with the other materials, sand and gravel, using a steam-powered mixer. We'll try to edit in good photos. I took photos with my phone of all of this. Ralph Snyder, a Fredonia resident, they got a quote from him when they set this up, said folks would drive clear down from Muscatine in their Model Ts to test the road out. The completed road was a wonder to the area residents and travelers alike. It was clearly the talk of the county, especially considering the then astronomical price tag of $9,983.52 per mile. In a historical twist on the story, Fredonia had dissolved its municipal government in 1874, but reincorporated as a town in 1922 to deal with speed demons on the new road who had come to race their vehicles on the smoothest stretch of road around. This simple stretch of concrete has a surprising historic significance. It's one of the earliest rural concrete roads built in the United States and one of the first in Iowa built with convict labor and outside of city limits. Laid down in 1914, this 1.35 mile road was built by inmates from Iowa's Anamosa Men's Reformatory at county government expense. This road may be the second oldest stretch of unaltered original concrete surface in the state. An overlaying geological sandbank made this stretch of East Iowa to the river almost impassable during using normal road materials. Vital to local transportation and growth, a concrete road was the only feasible solution. It was later designated as part of the route of 4 Iowa registered highways through this region. That says the sand road outside Fredonia before the cement was laid in 1914. Fredonia's sand road was part of the Great White Way. Note the painted telephone poles in the distance used to mark the route. So the White Way was white painted telephone poles to mark the route. The western terminus of the concrete road was at a site of Iowa's longest wooden wagon bridge, built in 1858 over the Iowa River between Fredonia and Columbus Junction. The remnants of the bridge piers are still visible at low water. The eastern terminus of the section is where it joins Highway 92 today. It says high water on the Iowa River in 1912 submerged sections of the 1858 wooden bridge and finally doomed it. So that bridge back there is the wooden wagon bridge, and there's the railroad bridge from back then. Convict labor on the road. Convict laborers worked for a 45-day construction period, delayed by a slow delivery of construction materials in late summer of 1914. They were provided with suitable gray uniforms, housed in nearby tents, fed and paid 25 cents per hour. Camp expenses, including salary for one guard, were deducted from their wages. Workers and residents of Columbus Junction and Fredonia also worked on the road. The inmates were short-timers, nearing the end of their sentences, and were trustees with few infractions on their prison records. The prisoners were frequently escorted into Fredonia, 6 at a time, and allowed to buy groceries. Several prisoners became involved in the local community. One convict often visited a nearby home to cook for one of the contract workers and corresponded with the family after his release. There were 2 camps built during the work. One was in a field adjacent to the east end of the project, and the other was at the west near the river. There's a couple more pictures here of the camps. And Ralph Snyder, Fredonia resident, they got a quote from him, said, "The kids in town always walked down to the river, but we were not allowed to walk down to their camps. Some of those convicts were nice fellows to talk to." And then there's another sign over here that talks about the highway markers of the day. Because back then, it was hard to find your way around. They just were getting figured out all of the, like how to mark your roads properly and everything so that people could find their way from place to place. Before the numbering system was established, highways were given colorful or historic names to guide motorists on long journeys. Telephone poles were painted with markings to identify the roads. The Convict Road is part of 4 different named highways. It says Transcontinental Highway System in the U.S. in 1924. So you could get there if you wanted to, but I'm sure traveling back then was a lot different. The pole markers guide, published in 1924, shows the markings of 25 named transcontinental highways. The ones that were here, markers adjacent to this exhibit, showed what they looked like, and here are their symbols. So the 4 that this road made up part of was the Great White Way, extended from Davenport to Council Bluff, a distance of 340 miles. The Bluegrass Road started in Burlington and ended in Council Bluffs, a distance of 310 miles. This portion through Louisa County was the northeast connecting extension into Davenport. The IOA short line extended from Davenport to Council Bluffs, a distance of 330 miles. The initial IOA had no significance except that it sounded like Iowa. And the Southwest Trail, this 540-mile route from Kansas City to Chicago, follows much of the Great White Way through Iowa. Then we'll look at the signs over here. That's what the marked telephone poles were painted to look like. So as you were driving, you could follow. The Great White Way is just white. You could just follow the marked poles along the roads to travel to where you were going. That's what you had instead of road signs back then. There's another sign here too, and I think most of the information is kind of a repeat, but the Convict Road is a stretch of concrete over a century old. The 1.5-mile road, finished in 1914, was one of the first concrete roads built in rural Iowa. It was funded by local taxes and built at a cost of roughly $45,000 in 1913. The Iowa legislature authorized the construction project of the Convict Road, a project completed by incarcerated men from the Anamosa State Reformatory. The road was part of the Great White Way, a route from Burlington to Council Bluffs, the first route designated by the Iowa Highway Commission. That's cool, I didn't realize that. A concrete road was necessary in this location as the bridge approach on sandy terrain frequently washed out and was closed to the bridge. Flooding problems continued, and the Convict Road bridge was washed out by 1930. It was replaced by a river crossing farther south, Iowa Highway 92. Most of the Convict Road is on public property stretching from Iowa Highway 92 to the River Forks boat access via 214th Avenue and Main and Concord Streets. The bridge pilings from the historic bridge are visible during low water. Pretty cool. I don't know why it took me this long to think to bring the 27 Dodge Brothers over to one of the oldest stretches of paved road in the state of Iowa, but it just hit me last week when I was driving home from work, so I pulled in here and took some pictures of those signs and then decided that today I was going to come over and make this video. We'll go on and drive on out the rest of the way to the end of the Convict Road and then loop around and come back the other way on it. spot's a little rough.
Yep.
There we go. You just rode with us from one end to the other of one of the very first and oldest concrete roads in the state of Iowa. I'm going to leave the camera rolling as we drive back over. At least we're not going to go clear back to the river landing, so we're going to drive about 2/3 of the length of it back through town to the main drag through Fredonia. So we'll record again going back through, heading that direction. Definitely that stretch going east-west is the best stretch of the road left.
Another 100 years, this will be gone.
Bet some of it will still be here. It's a state historical site now, so some of it will be preserved probably. Yeah, I see why people have been driving around this stretch of road. Yep. Yeah. Yes, it is. coming right back up to the main drag through town. Thanks for watching, folks. I just thought it'd be fun to do a little bit on this piece of Iowa history here. Thanks for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Share the video if there's anybody that you know that you think might be interested in this video. And come on back next week. We'll definitely have a video of something here for you to watch.